Dementia doesn't always begin with memory loss. It often starts with strange private conversations no one else hears. Long before someone forgets names or faces, the brain quietly sends warnings through eerie self-talk. And here's the terrifying part: they don't even realize it's happening. At first, they talk through simple tasks. Then they start whispering secrets, arguing with invisible people, or answering voices that aren't there. Eventually, their private conversations grow bizarre, even disturbing. These behaviors can appear years before dementia is diagnosed. But most patients don't notice it in themselves. That's why family members must be the first to recognize these signs before it's too late. If you see this, the brain is already changing. And without action, it will only get worse. Catching it early may be the only way to slow or even stop the damage. If you love them, you won't ignore this. Let's dive right in. Number 1. Speaking both sides of a dialogue. Nearly 2 years before his Alzheimer's diagnosis, Walter, 72, started talking to himself while reading the newspaper. His wife thought he was just thinking out loud. But soon, Walter's conversations grew stranger. He asked himself things like, "Should we go to the store?" and replied, "No, not today, maybe tomorrow." His tone changed between sides like two people talking. Months later, Walter was having full debates with himself, switching voices and pausing as if someone else were answering. One day, his son found him angrily arguing, both sides of a made-up fight about the neighbor's barking dog. That finally convinced the family to get him evaluated. Neurologists confirm that as dementia develops, brain regions responsible for impulse control, reasoning, speech monitoring, and social boundaries start to break down. This damage causes patients to act out, both sides of imagined conversations, vocalizing private thoughts they once kept inside. Over time, they lose awareness that this behavior looks bizarre, often leaving families unsettled and confused long before any memory loss appears. New dementia videos daily. Feel free to subscribe. Number 2. Pretending they're on the phone. About a year before her Lewy body dementia diagnosis, Judith, 75, started having phone conversations at odd times. Her husband thought she was calling old friends, but soon he noticed her holding the phone with no call active. She'd say things like, "Yes, I'll meet you at noon," or "Don't worry, I've already taken care of it." Sometimes she would nod, pause, and even wait for imaginary replies. One afternoon, Judith sat on the couch having a long, animated conversation, but when her husband checked, the phone wasn't even turned on. A few months later, she began pretending to hang up after these conversations, carefully pressing buttons that weren't active. That finally convinced the family to seek help. Studies show that as dementia progresses, parts of the brain that control perception, judgment, and external reality checking become impaired. Patients may replay internal thoughts as full conversations, often believing they're on the phone with real people. This false sense of interaction can persist for years, leaving families unsure if the person is imagining or remembering real conversations. Number 3. Whispering private secrets to themselves. A year and a half before his Alzheimer's diagnosis, Edward, 74, developed a strange new habit. His wife would often catch him softly whispering to himself while sitting in his recliner. At first, she brushed it off as normal self-talk, but as time went on, the whispers grew stranger. Edward would quietly say things like, "Don't tell them about the money," or "They might hear us." His voice lowered, and he often glanced around nervously, as if someone might be listening. Months later, he whispered full conversations to people who weren't there, pausing for responses only he could hear. One evening, his daughter overheard him whispering to the fireplace, revealing private family details no one had ever discussed. That finally convinced the family to call for a full evaluation. Experts warn that early dementia can disrupt the brain's ability to separate internal thoughts from external speech. This leads some patients to whisper private fears or secrets aloud, believing others might hear their unspoken worries. As judgment weakens, they may create imaginary listeners, fueling paranoia and confusion even in familiar surroundings. But most families don't realize many of these cases could have been delayed or even avoided. Spotting these strange private conversations early gives you a chance to slow the damage. They're not harmless habits. They're early signals the brain is breaking down, and recognizing them early may give your loved one precious time. Let's keep going. Number 4. Narrating their own actions in real time. Roughly 2 years before her vascular dementia diagnosis, Brenda, 76, began narrating everything she did. At first, her husband thought it was harmless. She would say, "I'm getting my purse now," or "Now I'll pour the coffee." But soon the narration grew constant. While folding laundry, she'd announce, "Now the blue towel, fold it once, fold it twice, stack it here." Even simple tasks like brushing her teeth became fully verbalized step by step. Her husband once recorded her softly announcing every movement as she cleaned the kitchen at midnight. When she began narrating in public places, strangers started noticing, which deeply concerned the family. That finally pushed them to schedule an evaluation, which confirmed what they had feared. Findings suggest that early dementia may impair internal speech regulation, causing thoughts normally kept silent to spill into spoken words. This leads to patients narrating daily actions aloud, as if guiding themselves through each step. The loss of self-monitoring grows more noticeable over time, often catching families off guard long before memory loss becomes obvious. Number 5. Rehearsing future conversations repeatedly. About a year before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, Richard, 80, started practicing conversations out loud. Standing in the kitchen, he would rehearse phrases like, "When I see him, I'll say this," repeating the same line several times, adjusting the wording each time. Sometimes, he rehearsed conversations for events that had already passed, or for people he hadn't seen in years. Over time, Richard rehearsed these conversations even while lying in bed, whispering different versions late at night. One evening, his family heard him practicing how to argue with his boss, despite being retired for almost a decade. That finally convinced the family to seek medical help. Research shows that dementia disrupts planning, language processing, and self-monitoring functions in the brain. This can cause patients to obsessively rehearse conversations out loud, replaying and modifying them repeatedly. As verbal control weakens, the brain struggles to filter what should stay internal, leading to compulsive verbal rehearsals. Number 6. Apologizing to invisible people. 79-year-old Linda started whispering apologies when no one else was around. At first, her husband thought she was simply talking to herself, but over time, the apologies became more frequent. She would softly say things like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," or "Please don't be mad at me." Often, she'd pause after speaking, as if waiting for a response. Over time, Linda began apologizing in different rooms, lowering her voice as if someone was nearby. One afternoon, her daughter heard her apologizing to an empty chair, reassuring the invisible person that everything was fine. That finally pushed the family to contact her doctor, and Linda was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia at age 81, 2 years after she began acting strange. Scientists warn that as dementia develops, patients may lose their ability to separate internal thoughts from external reality. Guilt, regret, or imagined conflicts may surface as whispered apologies directed at people who aren't there. This breakdown between private emotion and outward speech often confuses families, who mistake it for anxiety or stress long before realizing it's an early warning sign of cognitive decline. Number 7. Replaying past arguments or regrets. Nearly 3 years before his Alzheimer's diagnosis, Douglas, 72, began speaking as if responding to old accusations. His wife first overheard him say, "I never meant to hurt anyone," and "You don't understand what happened." At first, she thought he was reflecting on past mistakes, but soon, Douglas started having full emotional outbursts, defending himself to people who weren't there. He would sit alone, replaying painful arguments from years ago, raising his voice and shaking his head. One day, his son heard him tearfully explaining himself to the empty room, as if facing a long-gone family member. That moment finally pushed the family to seek medical help. A major study revealed that early dementia can disrupt emotional regulation and memory processing, causing unresolved conflicts to resurface unexpectedly. Patients may replay old arguments out loud, unable to suppress lingering guilt or frustration. As boundaries between internal thought and external speech weaken, these emotional outbursts become more frequent, confusing families who mistake them for mood swings or stress. These private conversations were easy to dismiss at first, but for many families, they were the first signs that dementia had already begun. The earlier it's recognized, the more precious time families have to fight back.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.